Okay, imagine for a second a parallel universe existing right on top of ours. A totally invisible world with its own complex societies, its own cosmic rebellions, and yeah, its own forbidden rules of magic. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into the hidden cosmology of the jinn, the absolute arrogance of Iblis, and these illicit esoteric grimoires that people have used for centuries to try and, pull the strings of the unseen. We're going to use direct source texts, from Orthodox theology to the actual forbidden books themselves, to unpack an invisible reality that has literally shaped human belief for centuries. Let's get into it.
So, let's kick things off with the ultimate question, the one that's driven humanity's obsession with the occult for a really, really long time. What actually happens when humans try to control the unseen? Well, according to the source text we're looking at today, crossing this boundary isn't just playing with fire. It's considered a massive cosmic crime with eternal consequences.
To really understand this unseen world, we first have to define its main inhabitants, right? The jinn. Linguistically speaking, the Arabic root of the word literally means concealed or hidden from view. The text used some pretty vivid comparisons here. Just like a fetus is hidden in the womb, or how the pitch black of night just totally conceals the landscape, the jinn are entirely veiled from our natural senses. They're operating right alongside us in a dimension we just can't physically perceive. And this brilliantly illustrates the cosmological baseline of it all. The texts draw a really sharp elemental line between us and them. Look at this. Humans are physically grounded, fashioned from heavy earthly clay and black mud. But the jinn? The texts tell us they were forged way before us, from something entirely different, a volatile, smokeless, essential fire. And as you'll see, this fundamental difference is the catalyst for pretty much the entire cosmic conflict between our two species.
Now, what's genuinely fascinating here is how relatable and honestly surprisingly mundane their hidden lives actually are. They aren't just these abstract floating spirits. They have complex societies, they eat and drink. Specifically, the sources note they consume bones and dung, which is actually why humans in these texts were specifically instructed never to use those items. They ride their own invisible beasts, they form diverse religious communities, and ultimately, they share our heaviest burden. They are fully accountable and will face paradise or hell on Judgment Day, just like us.
But the harmony of this whole unseen world, it shatters entirely with the story of one specific, incredibly powerful figure named Iblis. The texts reveal he was so devout, he was actually elevated to the very company of the angels. But then, the first human, Adam, is created, and a divine command is issued to everyone present to bow down in respect. This right here, this is the exact moment the cosmic order fractures.
Iblis commits the ultimate act of supreme arrogance. He outright refuses. And just look at his justification. It goes right back to that elemental baseline we just talked about. He says, "I am better than he. You created me from fire and him from clay." Basically, he views his fiery, volatile nature as inherently, indisputably superior to terrestrial mud. No way is he bowing to clay.
Let's track how this builds chronologically. Because of this defiance, the arc of Iblis transforms him from a lofty celestial presence down to the ultimate outcast. He gets expelled and accursed. But rather than being immediately destroyed, he asks for, and actually gets, a respite until Judgment Day. And he uses this borrowed time for one singular purpose: revenge. He essentially vows to sit and wait, to misguide humanity over our entire timeline, and to prove that we creatures of clay are just entirely unworthy.
And that vow to misguide brings us directly to the concept of sihr, or magic. Now, in these Orthodox texts, magic is never portrayed as some neutral, natural force. It's strictly defined as a forbidden transaction. It's a literal contract between a human sorcerer and a Satan, which is a rebellious jinn. The human has to commit illegal or polytheistic acts, and in exchange, demonic forces provide their unseen assistance to grant earthly desires.
The mechanics of this are just wild. Look at this. It's essentially a dramatic cosmic heist. The sources describe jinns sneaking all the way up to the heavens to stealthily eavesdrop on divine decrees. And it is incredibly dangerous. Angels literally hurl flaming fire at them to drive them away. But if a jinn manages to snatch just a tiny fragment of truth before getting struck, they pass it down to their human agent, the sorcerer. The sorcerer then takes that one stolen truth and buries it under 100 lies to deceive the public.
Because of this literal demonic supply chain, Orthodox Islamic rulings draw a very hard, uncompromising line. Seeking out a fortune teller or a magician isn't just, harmless curiosity, it is a major sin. The texts are explicitly clear here. If you go to a soothsayer and actually believe what they tell you, you have outright rejected divine revelation itself. Full stop. But despite these terrifying warnings of eternal damnation, human nature is, well, human nature. Our innate thirst for power, love, and control kept people reaching for the unseen. And this underground desire birthed illicit esoteric texts, grimoires, that deliberately cross these forbidden lines. They attempt to totally systematize the binding and commanding of the jinn. Which brings us to the dark underbelly of the occult. This brilliantly illustrates what we're talking about. An actual text called The Red Magic Grimoire by Al-Tawuki. It completely throws out orthodox warnings and promises practitioners absolute earthly control at literally any cost. We're talking spells for intense sexual arousal, brutal hexes to destroy enemies and inflict pain, rituals for fetching massive wealth. It even gives step-by-step instructions on how to invoke and command these incredibly powerful hidden jinn kings with names like Maymun and Amar.
Now, what's really interesting here is the jarring contradiction embedded right inside these spells. The sorcerer is commanding a jinn demon, King Amar, to do their bidding. But what authority are they using to force this demon's compliance? They're invoking the right of the noble Quranic verses. It's crazy. They are taking the very words considered strictly divine and twisting them into a mechanism for dark occult control.
So, the crucial point is this incredible paradox. On one hand, in Orthodox theology, reciting the Quran is the ultimate shield. It is the absolute weapon used to banish demons and destroy magic. But then, in the esoteric underworld, that exact same holy text is co-opted as a tool. Sorcerers are instructed to write out specific chapters backwards or in blood to summon demons, bind them, and cast illicit spells. The ultimate source of protection basically becomes the very tool of transgression.
To counter all of this esoteric misuse, Orthodox texts constantly reassure believers of the Scripture's true protective power. There's this super fascinating anecdote where a human confronts a powerful jinn that's manifesting as this terrifying hairy dog. The human asks it point blank, "What would protect us from you?" And the jinn is actually forced to confess its own kryptonite. It admits that reciting a specific verse, Ayatul Kursi, creates an absolute barrier that they just cannot cross.
Ultimately, this whole explainer highlights how this massive cosmological battleground is, in many ways, just a reflection of our own human psychology. On one side, you have the path of faithful submission, accepting the limits of human knowledge and trusting the divine. But on the other side, that's the alluring, deeply human temptation of forbidden control, the overwhelming desire to just pull back the curtain and command the universe to do your bidding, kind of exactly like how Iblis once refused to bow down to the divine order.
Which leaves us with this final, genuinely provocative thought to ponder. If these texts explicitly warn that the unseen world is entirely forbidden, that making deals with the jinn is a cosmic trap set by an ancient enemy, and that the heavens themselves are guarded by angels hurling actual flaming fire, why does humanity, century after century, keep reaching for the keys to unlock those doors?